my money.
If you want Cardone Kern to grow your brand for you, to get your market's attention, keep your market's attention, and cause them to know you, like you, trust you, and want what it is that you have to sell, go to cardonekern.com.
When you're in front of a customer, do I have your attention? When you're getting attention, you need to know something else is trying to get their attention too. You're in competition with everything, and you don't need to make attention. You need to get attention. They're tied together. Attention is money. Get it, keep it, multiply it. That means when I'm in a meeting, I need to get your attention. I need to get it. I need to be sure I have it. I need to keep it, and then I need to multiply that attention. Because if you don't keep my full attention, you ain't gonna get none of my money.
If you want Cardone Kern to grow your brand for you, to get your market's attention, keep your market's attention, and cause them to know you, like you, trust you, and want what it is that you have to sell, go to cardonekern.com.
Oh my God. Okay. So like for the past 20 seconds or something, I thought we were live because you were like, but you meant we were streaming the pre-roll live.
We are live.
Hey, trained professionals, ladies and gentlemen. All right, trained professionals. Look at this perfectly. Look at how you've got me in the frame here. I'm like again. I look like an icon. I'm like Saint Frank. If you want me to pray over you right now, I'll do it. I'm watching over you for your safety. And I really, if I had that capability, I would definitely do that, by the way. So, man, what a fitting frame for the topic of today's conversation. So today is, what's the date here, fellas? Tuesday the something?
Tuesday,
the 27th of August. Real bad with dates and times. And what I'm going to do with you today is I'm going to pay a tribute to Dan Kennedy and attempt to condense 18 years of study into about 25 minutes for you. So Dan Kennedy was my most influential marketing teacher. Unfortunately, he is, if you were to go to dankennedytribute.com and read the letter there, in his final days, which is very, very sad. But that's not what today is about. Today is about paying tribute to him, and more importantly, taking the lessons that I gleaned from 18 years of very, very intense study of this individual and giving those lessons to you, thusly maybe saving you 18 years of study. But it is worth studying everything he ever wrote because it was a lot. So I made a list of top 10 things, I think it is, that I learned from mean old Dan, as I like to call him. So thing number one, big lesson from Dan Kennedy, as it applies, all of these apply directly to business and you making more money, is the concept of autonomy. So I had to use the internet to look up what autonomy actually means, and in this case, specifically, it was personal autonomy. Dan is a huge believer in always maintaining personal autonomy. So the definition of it, according to the internet, all right, which everything on the internet is true, as you know, is this. Personal autonomy is the capacity to decide for oneself and pursue a course of action in one's life, often regardless of any particular moral content. Now, one could easily take that out of context and be like, oh, what you're saying is this dude taught you to act in an immoral fashion. No, I came by that naturally. What I mean by autonomy and what Dan meant by autonomy was you can and should live life and, within the context of this show, conduct your business however the hell you want to do it. And I'll give you an example of this. So Dan was not only a copywriter and an advertising man, he was also a marketing consultant. I remember he was very expensive marketing consultant, by the way, and I had the ability to buy a day of consulting with Dan several years before I actually bought the day of consulting with Dan because I was afraid I would get in trouble for not having done my homework properly prior to arriving to the day of consulting. He was so hardcore about personal autonomy, about having everything be his way or the highway, that even if you were signing up for a very expensive day of consulting with him, everything had to be done exactly on his terms or else. The end. So I'll give you an example of this. In the letter for like soliciting, private clients from him. He clearly said things like, okay, if you're going to become a client of mine, here are the dates and times at which I will be available to you. These are the only dates and times at which I will be available to you. And I'll never forget this phrase in the letter. And it was like in bold, maybe even in all caps, your emergency does not become mine. Now you would think on the surface, like, man, what an incredibly difficult person to work with. He wasn't, actually. He was really, really nice. He made me promise not to tell anybody. What are you going to do now? I'm telling people. Your secret is out. Dan, you are a nice guy. But he was like really, really militant about it. When you bought the day of consulting, right? So I'll never forget this. I show up. You got to fly to Cleveland, Like, he ain't coming to you. You got to go to Cleveland. You're not meeting at an office. You got to go to his house. You can't just show up to his house. He's going to pick you up at the hotel of his choosing, all right, which happens to be the one that is the closest to his house. So you have to, fly to Cleveland no matter where you are. So you're writing the check to him. Got to fly to Cleveland. You either have to be picked up at this hotel or at least, stay at the hotel, which is, it ain't a nice hotel, all right? So, and in all of the pre-consulting day correspondence, it's like, I'm going to be there at 8:15 in the morning. If you are not outside and ready, I'm going to leave and I'm keeping your money. It's like, okay. And you know what? It worked. It absolutely worked. And I'll never forget that lesson that you can really, within the confines of the law and moral behavior, obviously, you can really and should do whatever the hell you want. And that was a huge lesson in terms of you can actually do your business on your terms, and you should, because you are vastly outnumbered. If you have a skill of some sort or whatever, or have a product, there are more customers in the world than there are of you, and there's always the next one. So you should never, ever compromise. So that was thing number one, really, really important. I got to consult my notes here. Okay. Thing number two was to do the freaking work. So Dan made a lot of money, none of which he ever gave to me, by the way. Didn't go unnoticed, Dan. It was a one-way flow of money there. A lot went from me to Dan, none from Dan to me. That's okay. I don't mind it. It was worth every penny. So Dan had this thing, which was a ridiculous work ethic, kind of like Grant, right? So Dan and Grant are very, very similar. They never met, unfortunately. That would have been a really interesting conversation to watch, but not dissimilar to Grant, with the exception of Dan's time schedule was very, very regimented, which I'll talk about in a minute. But he was fiercely committed to doing the actual work necessary for success. And in his case, he was a marketing guy, consultant, copywriter, newsletter publisher, author. So he would write every day, like period, end of story. He's going to write every day, the end. He was so hardcore about it that if you go to dankennedytribute.com and read the letter that he wrote there from his deathbed, arguably, I mean, at least the way the letter is written, it sounds like it's his deathbed. The letter on the surface says something along the lines of, hey, it's a little bit awkward, but I've been told I only have a couple days to live, and I wanted to wish everybody well. And then he goes on to say, the person who, my partner in this business, because he owns a newsletter business with another fellow by the name of Adam Whitty, who's a pretty good guy. He goes, my partner in this business is, if I ever had a son, it would have been him, and he's perfectly well positioned to take over for me. And we all need to stick together in a time like this, and our community needs to stay together. So I'm reading the letter, and I'm like, that's a very good sentiment. And then, because I'm a student of Dan's, and I've known Dan for 18 years, I'm like, son of a bitch, that's a stick letter. So a stick letter, in direct response terms, is a letter that you send to the customer. It usually arrives with the package that they've ordered, and it talks them into keeping the thing that they have bought. So if you go to that letter and look at it from a marketer's perspective, my man not only continued writing while on his deathbed, but continued writing freaking copy while on his deathbed. And he was very, very successful because of that one principle. He did the work without exception every single day. I'm curious, do you? And I'm also curious what would happen if you did. All right, so that's thing number dos. Thing number three is he taught me the Holy Trinity. And the Holy Trinity is this: when it comes to marketing, there are three critical things that take precedence over everything else. They are list, offer, and copy. And it is in that order. So a lot of times, obviously here at the Cardone Kern Agency, we take on clients, and a lot of times clients become very, very obsessed with the product, which should always be good, right? But the product is never, ever going to be as important as the other two pieces of the Holy Trinity, which is the list and the copy. All right, so I'll give you an example. The list means the people that you're showing the ad to, the people that you're trying to pitch on it. Now let's imagine, okay, that the product, oh gosh, how can I do this without being really, really crude? I don't think I can. Let's imagine that the product is a night with a woman, okay? And so just let your imagination run wild there. And sorry if this sounds misogynistic. It's not meant to be, all right? So that's what we're trying to sell. We're in that business, all right? And so let's now imagine that the woman was horribly unattractive and very, very unpleasant to be with and smelled very badly. So our product, not so good. If we had that, and I really, I apologize for using a woman as a product now as I'm saying this, it's really coming out very badly, but I'm going to stick with the line of thinking anyway. If that was the business we were in, and we made that offer to a list of very successful, affluent men, wouldn't work, right? If we made that same offer to a list of dudes who had been in prison for the past 30 years, we would get 100% acceptance rate, right? The copy, people get so fixated on the copy, like, oh, what should my ad say? Well, you should always do your best, but in this particular instance, the copy could be like, hey, which one of you idiots wants to have a night with this lady? And they would still say me. So the Holy Trinity in marketing is list first, offer second, copy third. And the offer, incidentally, isn't the product itself, it's the way you position the product itself. Right? So that's the other thing that I learned from mean old Dan. The fourth thing, potentially the single most important thing, was in your marketing and in your business, you want to position yourself as, and I'm going to quote him directly, a welcome guest and not an uninvited pest. So when I first discovered Dan, it was after I had my final job, which was a door-to-door credit card machine salesman. I was very, very bad at it. I'm one of the worst salespeople in history, even though I'm in business with Grant Cardone. I will unsell somebody who's already sold. I'm that bad. And I'll do it with the best of intentions, but I'm just that absolutely horrible at it. So door-to-door credit card machine salesman, absolutely terrible about it. Get on the internet, type in, how do I sell credit card machines on the internet so maybe I can not have to deal with people slamming doors in my face all the time. Discover internet stuff, thereby discover Dan Kennedy. Start reading his materials. He talks about how awful cold calling and prospecting is, and how important it is to position yourself as someone that they hope to hear from. And what that translated to me personally was, wait a minute, if you could use marketing to get people to A, call you and ask you if you can become their customer or they can become your customer, that's great. And a step below that, but still awesome, is if you can get people to fill out a form that says, hey, I'm very interested in becoming your customer, please call me. Once I bought into that was not only possible to do, but the way it should be forever, everything changed for me personally. Never made another cold call again. All business is incoming. In fact, even here at Cardone Kern, we just finally started advertising for the agency this week. Very happy to report we had 130 people yesterday alone fill out a form saying, would you please call me about becoming a client? And I think everybody's business should have that. Is the ability to go hunt and get customers important? Absolutely. Is it a lot better to make them come to you? You damn right it is, right? And I learned that from Dan. And that was a really, really big one. And the way you do that, by the way, is in marketing. And one of the ways you do it in marketing is, I'm not texting people, by the way, I'm consulting my notes for the show that I wrote at 6-something this morning here. The way you do it in marketing is differentiation, all right? And so he taught me that as well. If you are positioned in the marketplace as just another blank, then you're dead. You're the person who's going to have to go out and chase business, right? So if you're just another salesperson, just another ad agency, just another consultant, just another brand of shampoo, whatever, you're doomed. You must differentiate. Just another is the kiss of death. So in order to avoid being just another, you use marketing and you use positioning, and there's a lot of lessons within that category that we can talk about later on the show, but that was a big one, to differentiate. If you look at Grant, right? How many real estate funds are there in the world? Like a gazillion. How many sales trainers are there in the world? A gazillion, right? They could all, literally, for all I know, because I only pay attention to Grant, you know, I'm kind of close by to him, so hard not to notice him, you know what I mean? They could all, for all I know, literally be saying exactly the same thing. But there is only one G-Money. I think we can all agree on that. There is only one of Grant Cardone, thank God. I mean, could you imagine if there were two? I think one's plenty, right? But that's the point, right? You really have to make yourself get outside of being just another whatever the heck it is that you do. And one of the ways it's always been easy for me, because I don't have really the big outgoing gregarious personality, is just to provide more value to the marketplace than the other guys, which therefore elevates your positioning among them. So that's pretty simple to do. Okay, thing number next, what I have on here is number 6, is ruthless time management. All right, so 20th year in the game this year, being an advisor to entrepreneurs, being in the advertising and marketing business. So write ads for people, write ads for myself, teach people how to do it for them, etc. Whole gambit in that world, right? Can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, I just haven't had the time to do that, right? Like I've had a client who, just yesterday, a client, I've got this little thing called a scaling group where I'll lead people for 8 weeks, little groups of 5, and I'll just say, okay, what's your outcome? And for that 8 weeks, you know, I'll help them achieve that outcome, and it's pretty fun. And I kept hearing from the guy, I just haven't had the time to do that one thing, which was like change a link in an ad, you know. Here's the deal, what I learned from Dan. He guarded his time more aggressively and ferociously than anybody I have ever seen, ever, in my life. So much to the point that he had a term for people that would waste time and called them time vampires and would banish them from his life completely. He was so hardcore about this that you could not call him, right? Like even when he's on his deathbed, right? And so I've been a student client 18 years, right? And I'm like, I want to pay my respects for Dan. Throughout his entire career, the only way you could reach this dude was by fax. It's 2019. Who the hell's got a fax, right? So still, that's it. Only way you're getting in touch with him, fax. Why? Because anything else would be an interruption and would disturb his workflow. He guarded his time that seriously. Not only did he do that, but the time was scheduled and regimented out throughout the day, like very, very militantly. And I'll make it up because I can't remember it, but he published like what his daily schedule was like. So it would be like 8 to 8:20, write. 8:20 to 8:45, take break, do whatever. You know, 8:40 to whatever, write some more, XYZ. Like if you were a client and you wanted to have a call, it would be scheduled on this day at this time, 15 minutes, no rescheduling, period, the end. That's it. Because of that incredible commitment to time management, and it's really not even management, it is more like time dictatorship, you know. So if we were to paraphrase him, because he never said this directly, so this is kind of what I'm interpreting from him. It wasn't, you don't manage time, you control it, you literally dictate. Here's how the time is going to be spent, the end, period. And then it ties back to the autonomy. The rest of the world's just going to have to deal with it. And it worked. You know, he really made it work. And the guy worked out of his house by himself, built up huge businesses, and was one of the single most influential people in the history of direct response advertising, largely because of that. Going along with that militant sense of time management was another thing I learned from him, which was to create for yourself something that he called a success environment, which I think is critical, and I really see Very few people do this. So I will define a success environment as a place where you do your very best work, which is set up with whatever is necessary for you to be successful. And so for Dan and for me as well, his office, which was his home office, was set up with books about the craft, marketing and advertising, books about being successful, thinking, proper mindset, overt symbols of wealth and success, such as framed currency, money laying around everywhere and all of that kind of stuff, etc. And then visual images of whatever it was, and for him it was like things that he really liked, that kept him in a mindset of prosperity as opposed to keeping him on a mindset of, oh, I got to fix these problems. And the reason that's important is because what you're thinking about dictates what you do. And what you do dictates what you produce, and what you produce dictates how much money you make, right? So that whole success environment thing was very, very important. So I'm here now in the studios at Grant's place. I actually don't work here at Grant's place. I've got an apartment that I've rented that my success environment is very different than most people. My success environment is an empty room with an IKEA desk and a computer and a chair. And it's always been like that. That's where I do my very, very best work. And I learned that from Dan. So whatever like your requirement is, figure it out and build it for yourself. Because your productivity, which of course dramatically affects your income, will skyrocket. And if you look at Grant, by the way, if you just watch him and you look at like what he surrounds himself with, you know, I mean, I'm looking like right now, there's currency, like literally in the studio, there's currency laying around. He's always got the jet there. Probably not for you, by the way, the viewer, probably to subconsciously keep reprogramming that mind. Yeah, this is possible. This is normal. This should be expected, which is another thing that I learned from Dan, which is the accumulation of wealth is to be expected. It isn't by some miracle or by luck. It is something that is a natural byproduct of simply doing the work consistently and holding the line. And huge lesson there. He was not a big get-rich-quick guy, not a big overnight success guy. He was like, yeah, do the work every day, consistently, don't screw around, and you kind of can't help but to accumulate wealth. And so very, very important lesson there. Okay, let's see here. The next one is brilliant, and I swear it sounds like something you would make up, but damn if I haven't tried it on many occasions and found it to be true. He flat out said this, and I'm paraphrasing probably, if not quoting directly, I'm coming pretty close, and that was this. If you'll look at everybody else in your marketplace, and you just literally do the exact opposite of what they're doing, you're probably going to be pretty successful. And, you know, I'll be damned if he wasn't right. Another case in point where we can talk about him because he's not here is Grant, right? Look at how many, I mean, so Grant's like gone from sales trainer to semi-motivational guy to, you know, huge like real estate guy, which is really more of a fund, you know, like a money manager kind of guy, right? How many of those guys are out there? A gazillion, right? Tons of them. Ain't nobody going out there, you know, hiring Snoop Dogg to show up at an event. Nobody's just blaring, like showing off their plane and being obnoxious as hell. Nobody's getting in public arguments with people on social media to defend their point. Nobody's nearly as aggressive as what he does. Nobody is as unprofessional as Grant is, you know. So if you look at him from the exterior and you watch the show, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this guy's so unprofessional in the demeanor, right? Now I gotta tell you, if you ever watch the dude do the real estate stuff, there ain't no unprofessional about it. I mean, that's like, if he was like, hey man, you wanna watch me negotiate real estate deals today? I'd be like, hell yeah. And if he was like, okay, it's gonna be $5,000, I'd be like, okay, sold, I'll watch it. You'll never see anything like it. So I'm not saying he's unprofessional in the actual practicing of the craft, but in the proper term, you know, or the public definition of professional, complete opposite, right? I mean, like, you know, guys on Wall Street aren't walking around acting like he acts, and it's working. He is the exact complete polar opposite of what everybody else does, and it works very, very well. And every time I've tried it, it works pretty freaking good, you know? So it's a generalized blanket statement, but you might want to take away the big fact that oftentimes the herd, the majority, it's just a bunch of people copying each other, and they're usually copying an idea that was bad to begin with. So test doing the opposite. I think you might be pleasantly surprised. Okay, the next one was the concept of price elasticity. Just because something has commonly cost X, Y, Z doesn't mean that you can't charge significantly more than X, Y, Z and have zero effect on sales. Dan told the story of in the self-help business and the how-to business, the going rate and the way that people generally just kind of came up with the price for the cassette course, for example, and I might be wrong here, so let's just say, it was like $20 per cassette. So if you're, so this is back in the day, right? So if your home study course had 20 cassettes in it, then it'd be like, okay, it's $400. And that was like kind of just rectally extracted by somebody at some point and adopted as the industry norm. Well, Dan had this idea, well, wait a minute. Who says it has to be that? What happens if if I go out and I try to charge triple that? And he did, and it worked. And then he went into, I remember he told the story of going into the seminar business in coaching chiropractors and dentists on basically how to have their act together from a marketing and customer acquisition standpoint. And all of the training in that area was like a couple grand or whatever. And he was like, I think I'll charge 35 grand. And it worked. And so the thing the term that he used to describe that phenomenon was price elasticity, that you never know. That you might be able to charge significantly more, and if your thing is actually valuable, and I really want you to please don't take this out of context. He never was like, hey, let's see what we can get away with. He was like, hey, if the thing's worth the money, and it's worth more than what you're charging, then keep charging, And that leads me to the other half of that, which was he would say, part of the secret to commanding high fees is the ability to state the fee with a straight face. And easier said than done. And he didn't mean like try to do it without laughing, right? So by no means of any kind am I ever suggesting that he would like try to pull one over on anybody or advise anybody to do that or take advantage of somebody. That wasn't what I mean at all, and that's not what he meant. He meant don't backpedal. Do not be afraid. Hold the line. And he was like, that's more than half the battle when it comes to sales. It's just holding the line. Not apologizing for the price, not being afraid to quote it, not being afraid to ask for it, and to keep a straight face. In fact, he was very immune to, and he would teach this, and I do not have this trait, but he was very immune to criticism. And he would recommend a book a lot called Thick Face, Black Heart, which is available on Amazon if you feel like reading a relatively difficult book to read. But it was essentially like, you just can't care what they say about you or if they get offended or if they're mad at you because you want a premium price. You have to be completely detached emotionally from whether or not you get the sale. If you take that positioning in the marketplace, you're probably going to sell more stuff. And it works. Now, personally, I'm not immune to criticism. I would like it if everybody in the world thought I was great, but reading and studying him certainly made me by far less susceptible to it personally. And if you look at our buddy, Uncle G, he likes it. I mean, look at that crazy bastard. He's like, this is especially, I'm sure you've seen him like on the show. He's like, hey, if you're enjoying this, let me know. And if you're hating it, please tell me in the comments. I love it. And he really does. Like, I'll talk to him privately and I'm like, dude, do you really not give a damn at all? He's like, no. Don't give a damn about the haters. Does not bother him one bit. Straight face all the way, right? He'll ask for the order. He'll ask for the sale. He'll ask for what he wants. No backing down. No apologies. And I'm telling you, it works pretty good. I learned it from Dan. I watched Grant do it. There's no real arguing with how successful he's been. Okay? And then I'll leave you with two last ones. And this is coming from his book, which is called No BS Wealth Attraction in the New Economy. If you got yourself $10 laying around, give or take, you might want to go get a copy off Amazon. It's real good. So he talks about this idea of wealth attraction, which is not to be confused by any means with law of attraction, sit around thinking about stuff and money will fall from the sky. He literally talks about actions one must take to be magnetic to money and beliefs that one must have in order to be magnetic to money. And two of the actions that he describes in the book are these. Number one, be somebody, right? And so what he meant by that, at least as I'm interpreting it in terms of be somebody, is be known as somebody of importance. And more specifically, it goes down into thing number two, which came from that book, which is do something. All right. And so the way I interpreted that was become known as someone who is exceptionally good at doing something. And when you become known as someone who is exceptionally good at doing something, then all the other stuff, which I mentioned earlier, which is like having the personal autonomy, being a welcome guest instead of an uninvited pest, having people come to you, being able to have price elasticity and charge premium fees. When you are those two things, known as someone who is incredibly good at something, the other stuff kind of comes together by itself. It kind of can happen as a byproduct of simply being someone and doing something. So those are 10 of the many things that I learned from Dan Kennedy over 18 years of study. I hope they help you as much as they help me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.
When you're in front of a customer, do I have your attention? When you're getting attention, you need to know something else is trying to get their attention too. You're in competition with everything, and you don't need to make attention. You need to get attention. They're tied together. Attention is money. Get it? Keep it, multiply it. That means when I'm in a meeting, I need to get your attention. I need to get it. I need to be sure I have it. I need to keep it. And then I need to multiply that attention. Because if you don't keep my full attention, you ain't gonna get none of my money.
If you want Cardone Kern to grow your brand for you, to get your market's attention, keep your market's attention, and cause them to know you, like you, trust you, and want what it is that you have to sell, go to cardonekern.com.